Hello, Herlighters. It's Erin Foley back in the booth talking women's sports. Very excited about today's episode. And yes, I probably say that every week. And maybe I say, yes, I say that every week. But you know what? Fired up because this one is a humdinger. Yes, I also said humdinger. I'm not editing any of this out. I'm just rolling with it. Let me just take a second and say it's 106 degrees in Los Angeles. The world is on fire. But in my office, I'm wearing a sweatshirt because it's 54 degrees and my nose is red and I'm wearing socks shoved into a sandal, which is always a hot look. That's got to be good for your health, right? 54 to 106. We're all going to be fine. Okay, here we go. Let's just jump into it. Today we're talking about a new WNBA documentary called Power of the Dream. You can watch it on Amazon Prime, and let me tell you, it is an absolute must-see. So many highs, so many lows, just so many emotions. Let me just tell you, all the feels with this one. Okay, here's like the official description, the log line, if you will. The empowering and unlikely true story of how a group of professional women's basketball players took on a WNBA team owner and rallied behind now Senator Raphael Warnock, forever changing the landscape of their sport and the course of U.S. politics. The documentary is produced by Sue Bird, Nneka Ogwumike, Tracy Ellis Ross, and Don Porter, who also directed it. It's like this amazing behind the scenes look at how these WNBA players, right? Okay, this is in the height of the pandemic, in the middle of the pandemic, which I will remind you of probably 765 times during the podcast. Okay, so in the height of the pandemic, they used a platform to create like change in the most impactful, in the most meaningful, most feel good way. And my guest today is the perfect person to talk about this documentary with. It's my buddy Shantira Jackson, Emmy nominated writer, performer. She's written for everything: Netflix's Big Mouth, Human Resources, The Amber Ruffin Show, Saved by the Bell reboot. She's also a panelist on NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. She's been on Curb. She was in the movie Bob, Bob and Star Go to the Vista Del Mar. I think that's actually the only way you can say that title. She's a total rock star. Okay, so we do like a deep dive on the doc. So I'm going to keep the intro short, besides the fact that I can't even speak properly, and we're just going to jump right in. Okay, so I gave you this real light assignment to dive into Power of the Dream WNBA documentary that I had been dying to see. I saw clips of it and I was like, this is obviously a must watch. And then I thought, who am I going to do this with? And I was like, Chantir. That's the only person I can do this with. You literally are the perfect person. We both very passionate about politics. We both do not like racism, just flat out.
No, it's like really top five of least favorite things. It's up
Yeah,
there.
it's so up there. I would say like Trader Joe's parking lots and racism,
I know,
like
neck and neck.
who's gonna win out? I don't know.
I mean,
Oh,
racism in the Trader Joe's parking lot.
oh,
What?
okay, how am I gonna recover? You just put the two most annoying things in the world in one space.
Yeah, America.
Oh, America. Yeah, I just knew I had to get you on the old Zoom for this because first of all, obviously we're also both huge sports fans. Also,
Mhm.
you're black and I'm white, so there you
Yeah,
go.
America.
That's a very important tool right there. We both love the ladies. There's
Yeah,
another
I
tool,
do.
in the toolbox. So I'm gonna get your let's do overall quick thoughts, and then I took 7 pages of notes, and we're gonna dive in.
Mhm.
But overall, give me like first impression of watching this doc.
I think the doc is great. I think it wasn't for me because I already knew all that stuff. So I think that it's for people who didn't know it happened. I was there. So I think that was the thing. I was like, this is a good refresher. I will say this. I think that the reason that it was so successful is because the WNBA is predominantly Black queer women
Yeah.
or Black women. I think that's the thing. And it's one of the only like I'm not a scientist, but I do think it's one of the only examples of like letting Black women take charge of a like an institutional issue, and then having white women listen and do what we tell them to do.
Yes.
There's a lot of people saying that that is what should be happening in the world. That's like the only microcosm I've ever seen it actually happening. And then we flip the Senate. So it's like, oh my gosh, just like, what if we just did it everywhere else that you keep saying we should do it, but we don't do it? So I think that that was like, it was like a great little test study for what we're capable of politically. And I think that it was really great. And I also think that it's so interesting that the people who usually have the most to lose are the people who are willing to lose it. It's like $30,000 ain't shit. That's just the way it is. And they could lose
Oh.
everything. And it's like, no tea, no shade to LeBron, but like he should have paid them fees. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh, and we'll get into that nitty gritty.
so yeah, that's my
yeah,
overall thing.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
but I do like being mean to Republican white women, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, there was so many, like you said, I knew every frame of this, but it does span the time from 2016 through
Yeah, it's a long
the end
time.
of 2020, right? So it didn't just specifically cover the flipping of the Senate, Loeffler to Warnock. So that I was surprised by. I thought they were going to kind of jump in
Right in
2020,
2020.
the
Yeah.
bubble, and talk about that. So I thought it was really, like you said, I had been there since 2016, watching the news, obsessed with the politics, horrified at just
Distraught.
overall distraught treatment of Black Americans, obviously since day one, and then. But I have to say, it was for me, when I wasn't crying, so enjoyable because I knew the outcome, right?
Yes.
So, and I knew the outcome was so positive, of flipping the Senate, of Loeffler leaving the Senate and also being disgraced and leaving the Atlanta dream. And we'll get
Yes.
into specific details, full circle moments. So I, amidst all the tragedy, I knew this wonderful outcome. So I felt
Yeah.
like I could relax in parts that didn't make me like physically ill.
Yeah, it was
Um,
like the horror
yeah,
movie, but you knew that your favorite character was gonna live. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that like that's the thing. I also think that I really like the minutia of it all because like I knew what was happening like on the grand scheme of things, what they show us on like in the media. But it was really nice to get like a first hand
yeah,
from the people who were like experiencing it, talking about their views and about how and what made them decide to speak up more, how they took care of each other. I think that like there was a part in the documentary when I can't remember who it was. It might have been Nneka, but I'm not sure. But they were talking about how organizing is so exhausting and hard, and how like people just kind of like see the outcome but don't know what goes into like the creation of these moments, and like how I always think about how people call it like an overnight success. This is like a deep cut, but you know the artist like Feist,
oh,
remember her?
absolutely, of
Yeah, you know
course. I,
Feist.
I
I'll never
just
forget.
saw her.
I love Feist. I always think
Right.
about Feist because this is for the old heads, but like when the Motorola Razor commercial came out and it was like, oh my God, I'll never forget. I had been listening to her. She's like, I think Canadian. I had been listening to her for like, it was like, yeah, it was like not her first album, and she got
Yeah.
nominated for Best New Artist. And I was like, new to who? Busha Boom, what are you talking about? She's been around forever. So it's like one of those things that was a long walk for me to say. It's like being nominated for Best New Artist on your fourth album. Like I
Yeah.
really think that like that is kind of like a really great example of what's going on in this documentary, which people got to see like the results and be like, oh my gosh, overnight success. And they were like, nay, 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 we've been at this for almost a decade. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's what goes into successful outcomes politically just in general.
Yeah. All right. So let's start. There's so many amazing moments. Literally, this could be a 7-hour podcast. So let's
Yes.
just let's hit the big moments. I've kind of timelined it
Hmm.
because there was so much happening. So just for by the way, everybody that is listening, you need to see this documentary. It's
It's
fantastic.
so good.
Even if you know culturally, politically what happened, in the time with Black Lives Matter, Say Her Name, Trump, Loeffler, Warnock, it is so good because even I am obsessed with the news, politics, and obsessed with the WNBA. There was a ton of moments that I did not remember or didn't see
Yes.
because that period of time during the pandemic was so insane. I don't even remember. And also, it's totally fine. This is going to be a bummer, but it's totally fine. My dad passed away like in May of
I'm
2020.
sorry. I'm so
So
sorry. I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah. But it's this is like full circle because he was like
Hmm.
he introduced basketball to me. So he would have been obsessed with the
Yeah.
he was obsessed with the WNBA. So what I mean to say by that is it was the pandemic. My dad, I don't, so there was, I was like, oh, I remember all of this, but I didn't because that time
We
was,
blacked out.
I
We
just
blacked
like,
out a lot. Yeah, it was a lot going on. We are so traumatized.
yeah, you know what I mean? There was so much
We're
going
so
on.
traumatized.
So I'm just saying, listeners out there, if you're like, oh, I know that story, there are
You
so many
don't.
moments that you really don't, and it was just so interesting. I mean, one of the most compelling parts was the camaraderie in 144 players coming together, and how they did that
Yeah.
is beyond. But all right, let's just take it kind of from the start, which I wasn't expecting, which was 2016. And this is obviously, you can say the documentary and the activism started from 2016. The activism started in 1997 when the WNBA was formed. Let's
Started.
just
Yes.
say
It's just,
that.
yeah,
When you
absolutely.
have a group of every marginalized community playing on the court, that in itself is activism. So
Absolutely.
let's just say that
Their
off the start.
existence is revolutionary. Their existence is a form of
Absolutely.
activism.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So but honing in on 2016, when I guess this is what you could say is like the good thing of the power of social media. We all realized, well, you'd have to be absolutely clueless if you think Black people were being targeted from day one on this earth. But
Yes.
specifically, people don't realize maybe it's happening until they actually can see it. They're like,
Absolutely.
wait, are football players violent? And then Ray Rice, you're like, oh, okay. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
So the brutal killings of Alton Sterling and Castillo, and so boom, it starts right there with the Minnesota Lynx. Now, this is before George Floyd, which happened in Minneapolis, but
Yeah.
Minnesota has been sort of on the forefront, as I think, as a state
Yeah.
of activism. So it kind of takes us through that summer of how, they're putting t-shirts on that says change starts with us, and this is Maya Moore. And it was kind of interesting because you could see these seedlings like being
Hmm.
planted, Maya Moore and Lindsay Whalen and Simone Augustus, Renee Montgomery, all these people that will be kind of pushing all of this throughout times. But it was just kind of interesting to start with that when you're like, oh, I forgot that was
I
2016.
know. It's also like, if I feel like 2016 is 2 years ago, but it's almost a decade ago,
Yeah.
you know? And it's like my Moore don't even play anymore. Like there's
Yeah.
so much of like it's so interesting how much happened in
Yeah.
just that amount of time, and like how like so few people were able to make such a huge impact.
Yeah.
And it's also like a sport that like right now it's like, oh yeah, like WNBA is all over the place. Like we've never had more love for women's basketball. But it's like one of those things where it was like, they weren't doing all that love when this was going on. So it's very interesting to see the juxtaposition of like, I just went to a New York Liberty game like 2 weeks ago, and it's like sold out, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like watching the way that like people rewrite history. Like I always think about those pictures of people like in like the 50s and 60s, like holding fucking water hoses, and you're like
Yeah.
looking at these people booing, and I'm like, you're at a game right now, you bitch. I know
Yeah.
it. You're at a game right now trying to freaking watch Caitlin Clark. Like we got video of you being a bitch. So it's just like so interesting that people are like, that was so long ago. It's like, no, bruh.
No.
It's like, it's so close.
But it was also kind of this really interesting. This is why I thought the documentary, it was just, I thought it was so relevant and so good to start at 2016, because obviously
Yes.
that is the birth of the Black Lives Matter movement, but also Trump, right? So
Yes.
it was this crazy time period of Black Lives Matter, Trump throwing everything into an absolute disgusting frenzy. Then you have Me Too,
Hmm.
2017, 2018, Me Too. And then 2019, Maya Moore, who was one of my all-time favorite players. And I grew up a UConn fan, so I had been watching her since like day one. And the most interesting thing is when she first decided not to play, one of her
Hmm.
first statements was, she's a very religious person. And I obviously, it's not for me, but I respect everybody's, faith. And she said, I need to spend more time or strengthen my relationship with God. I think that was something like
Hmm.
that. And I immediately said, please do in the off season, because I did not, I
What
so
was a basketball?
I was like, but during the season, you need to play basketball, because the thought of losing, I mean, she was at almost like the prime of her career,
Yeah.
and she stepped aside. And then quickly thereafter, her faith obviously was also intertwined with social activism in people that were wrongfully detained. And now her
Yeah.
story is like epic. But to lose her on the court, but anyway, so you've got like the Me Too, the Black Lives Matter, then Maya Moore, and then the same point in time, Kelly Loeffler, the president, or the owner, I'm sorry, of the Atlanta Dream, then being plucked by Brian Kemp,
So
governor of
crazy.
Georgia, to fill an open Senate seat. And it was like this crazy confluence of all this political and societal unrest,
It
all
was a
happening
ticking
at one
time
time.
bomb. It was just
Yeah.
like a ticking time bomb. Time bomb.
Yeah.
It was just like too many things at once.
Yeah.
Too many cooks. Too many cooks. And it
Yeah.
just kind of all exploded in 2020, because we all have time to be home
Yeah.
like, trip the wire and make it go boom. I think that like I often think about too, like 2016, I was like doing comedy in Chicago, and it was a thing where like just like a lot of white people were like, it's fine. And a lot of black people were like, no, like this is really serious. And they were like, it's gonna be fine. And it's like, no, please, it's not. It's really bad. Like this is really bad. And then it like wasn't fine. And then all the white people were like, oh, damn. Well,
And
like they
it
had
and
to
you
reprint 1984. I had to like be like, oh, everybody wants to buy this book now. So I think that like it was just a like you said, kind of like a powder keg of everything coming to fruition in 2020. And then we were like at home. I called my grandmother on the night of the election, and I was like, Louise, what do you think? And one of the things that she said, she was like, it's always been like this. I'm from the deep south. I'm from Tallahassee, Florida. And my like aunts and my grandparents like integrated schools. So like I was like, what do you think about all this? Like, what do you think is going on? And she was like, the main thing that is differentiating what is happening now and what is happening when we were coming up, it's like it's all the same. It's all the police, everybody doing the same thing. She was like, the only difference is the ability to provide proof.
mm,
She said, that is the
yeah.
only thing. She goes, we have been talking about it. People have been screaming about every injustice in the world for since we could write it down. It's the seeing is the believing. The ability to record everything that is happening to every marginalized group. And then also after that video of anything to have a response from people, that's what's changing everything. Even in the 50s and 60s, the pictures of the people hosing people down and the dogs and all that stuff is what got America leaning in. And
Yeah.
now we got the moving picture, and that's what's really helped elevate even the women in this documentary, just this documentary being able to exist because
Yeah.
we have a history of rewriting history. So I think that that's one of the things that makes this documentary so cool, is because it's always like 80 years later, they like find some old lady living in a house in the middle of fucking North Carolina. And they're like, what was it like? She was like, I don't remember much. No, these bitches remember. We
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
There's
No,
no rewriting this.
it's so true. And that's why it was so enjoyable. Not
Yes.
only can I use the words powerful, important, must see, obviously, that's a no-brainer, but also just from this other perspective of sport, and this perspective of like what you can do with a platform if you choose.
If you
And
choose.
what was so powerful was when all of this social unrest that was so painful to revisit, and then you throw the pandemic in, right? So the documentary kind of like, lines up at the end of 2019 into 2020, there's this whole new CBA, collective bargaining agreement. And it was absolutely huge for the
It
WNBA.
ruled. It was awesome.
I mean, an 83% pay increase, paid maternity leave. It set the bar, it set the blueprint for other leagues around the world, and just for women in general, right? So there so you have this like highest of high moment for the WNBA. Then the pandemic hits. And what was so crazy about this time, this is why it's just such a compelling watch, is you think at this point in time, the big struggle, right, is can we play? Just can we play in a pandemic? How
Yeah.
are we going to play? Is it healthy? Is it okay? Is it safe? What about our families? If we don't play, right? So, there was this moment in the documentary where Holly Rowe, who needs to be my best friend, just one of the most incredible reporters, and also just wears her heart on her sleeve, is saying like, there's a moment where there's some teams that are obviously still trying to, make financial gains be viable in the WNBA as owners. Like, they're not going to be able to continue, having a team if you can't not play a season, right?
Yeah.
Now the salaries are $35,000-$40,000 for some of these players, So I'm just sitting there watching this, like, not only is all this social injustice happening, it is a pandemic after a collective bargaining. This is their livelihood. Teams might fold. It's women playing, now, of course, the WNBA is up here, still in some cases, not exactly financially solvent. We're getting there. But you think, oh my God, how are they going to get through this moment in the pandemic? That to me was mind blowing before, what we're about to visit, what we're about to talk about with the social injustice.
It's a lot.
I was blown away with that, with just that moment. Just that moment blew me away.
Yeah, it's a lot. I also like to think about like how so many marginalized groups like never just imagine what people would be capable of if they just got to focus on basketball.
They are basketball players.
If they just got to play basketball, they're doing all of this with everything else on top of it. And I always think about like not the people who aren't allowed to play basketball, but like I'm thinking about like if Sue Bird didn't have to go and do 50 press conferences about Black people getting killed, how many gold medals does Sue Bird have? And it's like, it is so amazing that they're capable of being this great with the added pressure of the stress, the depression, the anxiety, the literal death threats. And I think that like that's the thing too. I'm like, okay, I'm sure people go online and they be saying all kinds of crazy stuff to the men in the NBA. But when you got $50 million, you could probably be like, I don't have to take that death threat seriously. You make $30,000, you got to take that death threat seriously, because what are you going to do about it? So I think that it was awesome that we were able to also get good basketball out of this, in addition to, life-changing political uproar. Like, get somebody who can do both.
It was just, I'm really, truly just blown. Like, I was blown away after watching this documentary. And I'm like, and then of course this morning I had to watch it again and take notes. And now I'm talking about it. So I'm at a fever pitch of just like, it was just
Indiana fever pitch.
Indiana fever pitch. I couldn't get over how at the backdrop of all of this, they had to play basketball.
They just had to go play basketball.
So then they come together, right? And then, there's also this moment in the film where, at the start of like, the bubble, the WNBA is like, okay, if you play like 10 games, you get this percentage of your salary. If you play, and they're just like, no. So they
Give us
stood
our
up for
money.
themselves and they said, we are not going to play unless we get 100% of our salaries. We dedicate the season to Black Lives Matter and we dedicate the season to say her name. I'm getting goosebumps. So
Yeah.
that was the first moment. This is the first moment of the film, I mean, first moment, like inside the pandemic, they're fighting to play to get 100% of the salaries. And then also adding, a pretty controversial, Black Lives Matter, which
Yeah.
should not even be remote. I'm almost laughing because if you consider that controversial, you've got a real problem.
Yeah. Why you're listening to this, I'm very surprised. If
Yeah.
you're listening to us and you
No.
find that controversial, I'm surprised. But
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah. just basic humanity.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
but yeah, I thought that was just so incredible that there's all this like, moment of are we even going to play basketball? Then they decide as again a collective, one voice saying, okay, we'll play under these terms. Again, the WNBA could have been like, we're not going to do it. And all of this could have changed, but then they're like, okay, we're all in. And
And
then
that it's the
yeah,
collective. I think that
yeah,
that's the thing too that's so hard about this country sometimes is that like we cannot get it together. And it's like I said, it was such a great example, a great like a scientific study of what happens when you have that collective bargaining, when you have everybody agreeing for like it's a strike essentially. We don't
yeah,
play unless we get paid. And I think that there's a lot of talk of revolution in a lot of ways, but it's really revolutionary for them to basically unionize, get their thoughts together, get money, get respect, and get what they were asking for. And it all came because the not the lesser of them player wise, but like the people all the way at the bottom who are don't get to travel or something, and Sue Bird, and like she
yeah,
was also a producer of this movie, but like she's at the pinnacle of her career. She's making mad paper. She's got Megan Rapinoe by her side, and it's like if she decides that she doesn't want to participate, it's like using what you have. It's so powerful. So I think it's like such a great example of what happens when people like all come together and fight for what they want instead of like bitching
yeah. I mean,
about somebody else doing it.
okay, so let's just take this one moment, right? Before
Mm-hmm.
the season starts, they decide, okay, here's what we're gonna dedicate the season
Yeah.
to. We're gonna be very vocal about it and wear t-shirts and do as much activism as possible, right? It missed a pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, there is a Zoom footage. This is when I lost my mind. Of I would say I don't know, like the players committee,
Yeah.
it's Nneka, the Sue Birds, Leisha Clarendon, the
Elizabeth, what's her name?
Elizabeth Williams,
Yeah,
she
Elizabeth
was
Williams.
amazing. So it's like the executive players committee. I'm going to say it like
Mm-hmm.
that. The reps basically of the players. Now
Yeah.
Nneka is the president of the WNBA,
Yes.
players union, but so it was like these five women on a call with Breonna Taylor's mother
Mm-hmm.
saying,
Breonna Taylor.
Brianna, what did I say?
Yes, Brianna.
Oh, Brianna, sorry, Brianna.
Yes.
Jesus, thank you. Saying we're going to dedicate this season, in memory of your daughter, and we're going to fight for her and say her. I mean,
I was
I was
crying.
losing my mind.
I have, you can't see it. We don't have to post that. I have her on my wall.
Oh wow.
That's Brianna. And I think that like that, I had to get a second therapist after she was killed. It was like really, really, I think that it affected Black women in a way that's like pretty indescribable, like current, like obviously there's a lot of stuff in the past. And I think that her death really impacted that league in a way that will ring through like forever. Like I think that because that league is predominantly Black women, I think Sandra Bland for sure was like a catalyst because that's really where like say her name really picked up. And then when Breonna was killed, I think one of the things too, I'll say from my own personal experience, is that I had the time to grieve her. Like, I
Mm,
think there had never been a time where when police are killing us, present tense, that there was people at home getting $1,600, from the government. Like, you don't, and that's how white supremacy works. You don't have the space to grieve what's happening to your community. And it was a collective world at a standstill. So
yeah.
you got to be at your house. And usually what we would do is go, I got to go to work. I
Yeah.
got to go to work. I got to go to work. I got to take my kids somewhere. I got to make dinner. I got to figure out how I'm going to pay rent. That obviously in capacities was happening, but the government for like 2 seconds was giving us some money and people were at home able to like that. People started doing hobbies, doing their side hustles, reading more. And also all the fun stuff happened. And then I think a collective grieving happened for her in a way that was inescapable, in a way that was not possible had we not been in a pandemic. So I think that like it's so interesting that like she was a catalyst for this, and that they allowed that to happen. Like, I'm always like, I think there's plenty of people who always want to do stuff, and it's the people above you allowing it. So like the commissioner of the WNBA, like even before, like we were talking about 2016, being like, we're not going to find them anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we got the big dogs up here doing stuff.
But
So
it did
yeah,
take a while. The
it
Lisa
took a while.
Borders, just listeners for what we're referencing here is when they first the Lynx and a couple other teams put, let's just say, I don't know the slogan at the time, but it was just basically like, fighting for justice t-shirts.
Yeah.
They were fined. They were fined $5,000 per team and then 500 per player,
Hmm.
making, nickels. And then they reversed it.
Yeah.
But again, this is another thing. $500 is what
A lot of
I would
money
say
when you
like
make
a third of your
$1,500.
paycheck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, but they did it. This is what I mean. They were constantly stepping up to the challenge. Yeah. Clarendon, to your point, who is just I don't know, an angel from above who happens to play now for the Sparks. So I finally get to cheer for
Yeah.
her. Well, Liberty's my team, but Sparks are my second team. She was saying that, a lot of black men get more, wherever for whatever reason. It's just men versus women. Basically, black
Yeah.
men will get
A
more
lot more
coverage,
attention. Yeah. A lot more attention, a lot
but
more
black
coverage. Yeah.
women are like, the lowest rung. So when this
Hmm.
happens to Breonna, like it's like I could have. They see them like that could have been me. She could have
Yeah.
been me. I could have been her. So I
Yeah.
think it elevated that pain point even more.
Hmm.
Um, but that Zoom with the mom, I was like, I can't. I'm going down hard.
I know the
Um,
Zoom is so cool. Like the Zoom with her, and then they did a Zoom with Michelle Obama talking about what to do. I think that that's another thing that what do you call it? What's the other digital video thing that basically shit the bed that existed before? I think it
oh,
starts with an S.
Skype.
Yeah, I always think about how Skype just fucking what a loser. You know what I'm saying? Like,
They
not
had
you.
it.
They fucking had it, fucking shit the bed. But I was thinking about how Zoom really, again, my grandmother talking about the technology of it all. Like, we were
Yeah.
in a pandemic, and what should have been, and in a lot of ways, was the most isolating experience in the world that we currently collectively have felt. It also was the most connected that we were able to
Yeah.
be because of this little box,
Yeah.
like
I know
that we
it's
spend too much
incredible.
time on. It's like, when do you get to just talk to Michelle Obama? When does she have the time? When is she able to travel? You know what I'm saying? So like it was all of this is capable because of the pandemic, so it's like so funny how something that is like so like hard and terrible and painful also bred like the ability to collectively get together and influence like an American election, which is
Oh,
usually what the Russian robots are doing, but we got to do it.
now it's Iran. How fun. Anyway, all right. So at this moment now, we have, they start, and I do very clearly remember thinking, oh God, I hope there's a season. Like, I hope they're playing because I think all of us just wanted to take a break from the, onslaught of terrible news and just watch basketball. Like, it was such an outlet, and I
Absolutely.
watched, obviously a ton. I distinctly remember all of that because I was just like, I gotta watch some basketball. I gotta watch some. And so, you have all this happening. And I think also Clarendon was just like, it was every other day they were playing. She was like, it was so physically demanding, right?
Yeah.
So they get back, they're in the wubble of Bradenton, Florida. They're playing for themselves, but obviously for every marginalized
Yeah.
community. And then they just get a little momentum, right? And then Kelly Loeffler, who is the devil,
Yeah.
at that time, sitting senator from Georgia, the owner of the Atlanta Dream,
It's
comes out
crazy.
with a statement. I just have to read a couple lines.
It's
Um,
crazy.
this is a letter she sent to Kathy Engelbert, who I absolutely love, the WNBA commissioner. And she said, I was incredibly disappointed to read about the efforts to insert a political platform into the league. So from day one, she's called Black Lives Matter a political
Hmm.
platform. But to subscribe to a particular political agenda undermines the potential of sport and sends a message of exclusion. The truth is, we need less, not more politics in sports. And then she goes on to say, in a time when polarizing politics is as divisive as ever, that she is literally the politician
Yes.
that's making it so divisive. Sport has the power to be a unifying antidote, and now more than ever, we should be united in our goal to remove politics from the sport. The lives of each and every African American matter, and there's no debating that fact. There's no place for racism in our country. However, I adamantly oppose the Black Lives Matter. I'm laughing because it's so insane. I
It's
adamantly
crazy.
oppose the Black Lives Matter political movement. And then, calls it, she says in the movement, calls for the removal of Jesus from churches, the disruption of the nuclear family structure. You're like, what are you? Okay. So
Well, the
this
thing
is,
that got me too, because I think in that letter, she's like, the way that we solve this is to put American flags on
yes,
all of the jerseys. And
yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
what? Why
yeah.
are you,
So
what are you talking about?
take off all the everything that she doesn't agree with and then put on the American flag. Now, real quick, let me just say this. One of the most interesting things that I did not know, because I only know her to be horrible, is
Hmm.
when they had footage of when she first bought the Dream, and her seemingly completely normal, like saying, oh, I'm
Yeah.
here to support the team, like I'm from a small town, blah 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 blah. The players, McCautry, Clarendon, they said, oh, they sat down across from her and had dinner with her, and they really liked her. It was it was
Yeah.
two female owners of the Atlanta Dream. So I had nothing but good thoughts about Kelly. It seems like everybody did. And then
Yeah.
she gets into the political spin machine, and because of Trump and because it was so extreme, it was who can out Trump.
Yeah.
She starts with this and then saying, put the American flag to a ownership of a team filled with black women and gay black women and
Yeah.
gay women.
It, it's so odd. I think one of the things I mean, Trump really polarized just the right in general, because I remember, like I said, I grew up in the South. I remember when like George W. Bush won, and this girl was like, "Oh, I'm so happy he won." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know any people who are happy about this." Like until I went to school, like I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, there's people who are happy, not my family." But I was just like, whatever, I go to school with this girl, whatever. But like that election really changed somebody who was a Republican. I'm fiscally Republican. Now it really just means racist. You are a racist. Like, I don't want to hang out with you. I don't want to talk to you. I think that like I'm trying to protect myself, because even then, obviously, there were a lot of Republicans who were racist back in the day. But if you were like, I voted for George W. Bush, I'd be like, okay, your daddy probably told you to do that. I don't care.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now I'd be like, I don't feel along with y'all. It is so
Yeah.
polarizing. So
Yeah.
I think that there's a statement in the documentary where she was like, I have been a lifelong conservative. And I was like, that statement has changed so drastically.
Yes.
Being a lifelong conservative, obviously there's a lot of things there, just Reagan and all kinds of crap,
Yeah.
being a lifelong conservative meant a lot of things, but it also like the bold assumption that you don't respect the humanity of people who don't look like you was not the go-to. The go-to was, you're probably rich and your granddaddy probably said the N-word a couple times. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would just assume that that's who you were, but I was like, I wouldn't be
Our
scared to ride.
parents' conservatism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, whatever. You wear boat shoes. Now,
Yeah.
absolutely not. Thumbs down, bro. So I think just the polarization of, if she was the owner, I'd be like, yeah, who doesn't own a basketball team and is in a Republican? Like,
Yeah.
like that makes sense to me. So I think that the polarization of what being a conservative is now, and for her to be like, that is who I am, is terrifying. For somebody who also is responsible for your paycheck. And I think it's also weird because like Republicans have a big thing about experience, about like, oh, like that's their whole thing. It's like, they never did it before. Like Kamala's never done it before. And it's like, what the fuck was the basketball owner doing? Why is she a
She
senator?
literally
Why?
was never in
Never in
politics
politics.
and
So it's just like,
filled a retired senator's seat, was
it's just,
never elected by the people. Now, listen, she has
yeah,
every right to go, okay, yeah, okay, I'm a
I want to
conservative.
do that.
I
Yeah.
want to be in politics, whatever. So she finds herself, okay, fine. If that's your path, that's your path. But then you are still the owner of a
Of a basketball
women's
team.
basketball team. And to go out and say that, it was so brutal, because also you're saying take the politics out of sport. You are a politician that owns a sports
Own the
team.
sports
Like,
team. Yeah.
so it's like, no, what you mean
The
is, if
cognitive
you don't
dissonance
agree with me,
is absurd.
then you can go fuck yourself,
Well,
essentially.
can I just say this? This is what I'll say. If I was just like a rich blonde white lady, you would never hear from me. I would never say anything. I would shut the with two E's, not the fuck up. Like, just
Yeah.
shut up and go eat your food. You're ruining your own life. Just shut up. That is what I would do, unless I was like a Democrat, and then I would be screaming. But if I was like a Republican and I had like a bajillion $1,000,000, you'd never hear me. I would just shut up. That I swear to you, on the Bible, if you just shut the fuck up, you can have the most peaceful, conservative, racist time of your life. Get off the internet, bro. I'm just saying, that's all you gotta do. All she had to do, she could have been the most racist. She could have gave all her money to Trump, and all she had to do is shut the fuck up. She couldn't do it. She couldn't do it.
She's running for re-election now.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody in that, they called it like a jungle primary. There was like 15 different
Which
people.
I'm sure is racist. I was like, let me look into that. Why do you call it that?
Jungle primary?
I was like, why do you call it that? Why do you call it that?
So there's like 15 people. So that's like this pressure to out Trump, Trump, and or to get the attention of Donald Trump. That was everybody's, So, she went above and beyond. And so now we have an Elizabeth Williams, who's just a dream sequence. So she kind of became the spokesperson, and her journey throughout the documentary, at first being like, I didn't know how to use my voice. I wasn't sure. I wasn't scared. Like, is the league going to close? And now she is out front of all of it on the committee, Duke graduate, so well spoken. She's a dream. So she basically takes on the representation of the Atlantic Dream. Now, remember, we've got the whole WNBA, but she is the owner of the Atlanta Dream. And I thought it was really great points in the documentary of like Nneka and Sue Bird being like, we have to turn to the players of the Atlanta Dream and say, what do you want to do? Right? Because that is the person that's
the perfect example. That's the perfect example of what, like I was saying, it's like what we're talking about. Like, Black trans women should be at the forefront of every revolution. The least of us, the people who are treated the least of us, should be leading us because they are a part of all of the intersections, right? We're talking about intersectional feminism, right? Those people are the people who are going to be able to connect and help all of us, right? When Black trans women are free, we're all free. So like it's a microcosm in this basketball world where it's like, okay, the people who have the most to lose should be making the decisions about what we're doing as a collective. Because I keep saying Sue Bird, because she's the wealthiest, she has the least to lose. She already has 3 or 4 championships at this time. She is going in the history books. She's well beloved. She's starting the fucking production company. Like she's on the way into the next part of her life. There are freshmen. This is their first season. You know what I mean? So we can't have Sue Bird making the decisions about what is best for the collective because at the end of the day, she will be fine. And she recognizes that. And I think that
she's amazing. Yeah.
Basketball is the perfect backdrop for this because I always talk about things like when you do comedy and you're trying to like teach people, you don't want to be too preachy. I think about like George Carlin. It's like you're putting the pill in the cheese, like when you try to like give a dog medicine. You know what I'm saying? This documentary is a really great example of like a micro of what we can do collectively on a macro. And it's really, really cool to see if they played everything right. There were no missteps. And to watch it's like a basketball play. It's like you're trying to win. You got full court press and they played it perfectly in every capacity because they planned everything and they knew how to listen to. So I think it's so cool that the team, the least of them, the dream who had the most to lose is people who are put in charge. And that's what we're supposed to be doing anyway.
Yeah, it was so well said. I mean, it's so true that it was just so interesting that they had this sort of really emotional / well thought out organization. It was so thoughtful. It was so
it's run by women.
Yeah.
It's run by women.
Say, when you look at all the people that are putting it in place, you're like, well, yeah, because they've literally not only wanted to do that, have had to do this in their lives, fight for every single crumb, no matter what the issue, race, gender, like whatever it is, So
and the schedule was right. There was everybody was on a Google Calendar. They knew where to be. Well, nobody late. It's so funny, like just like the election in general, like the people being like, women can't be in charge. Every good party you've been to, it's a lady behind it.
There's always
a lady did that.
By women.
Your cake, the decorations, the valet parking. If your shit was run well, it's a little lady back there who's doing it.
All right. I just want to read the statement put out by the Atlanta Dream after this letter drops. We are the women of the Atlanta Dream. We are the women who support a movement. We are strong. We are fearless. We offer a voice to the voiceless. Our team is united in the movement for Black lives. It's not extreme to demand change after centuries of inequality. This is not a political statement. This is a statement of humanity. Black Lives Matter. I mean,
straight to the point.
Mic drop.
Straight to the point.
They have to do this to fight back for the owner of their team during, again, playing basketball during a pandemic. If that's not enough, they have to deal with this insane bullshit.
And I love that. Like I said, it was good basketball. They're playing good basketball.
They're playing amazing basketball.
And I think that's the thing too. Is like so many people will be like, "Shut up and play." They are playing, and doing this. You're someone who can do both. So I think that like that is the beauty of this thing because people will be like, "Just stick to." I can do a bunch of stuff. These women are perfect multitaskers.
Oh my God. When people say, which is documented in the film, and it's every, walk of life when there's a, intersectionality of sport and culture, you just stay on the basketball court. You don't know what you're talking about. To say that to specifically, I'm getting like a Black gay woman.
Yeah.
Do you have eyes? How can I not see the injustices that are happening And I mean, you can, right? They could
Yeah.
have done nothing. They could have
And that's one of the
absolutely
reasons they
done nothing.
don't want you want to watch basketball, and they're like, just please just play basketball so I don't have to think about it. But it's like, no, until I'm comfortable, you don't get to be comfortable either. That's the thing.
I respect, like, it's not like I don't respect people that are in positions of power. I'm just talking about in the arena of sports.
Yeah.
That don't go above and beyond and use their platform for good. I still respect them on the court, you know?
Yeah.
But the players that do, you know, I remember Charles Barkley back in the day, I'm not a role model, that famous quote.
Yeah.
And it made me so angry because I was like, fuck you. You could be an amazing role model. Oh, it's not my
a Republican.
You know, I'm a basketball player. And I'm like, yeah, no, I get that. But also what you could do, like, think about, like, so, you know, during this documentary, when you see all these women, they didn't have to do any of it. They literally they didn't have to, it would have been above and beyond for them to play in a pandemic to give us a break and watch basketball. But they not only fought back for Black Lives Matter, say her name. Now they are inserted. They didn't ask for any of this. They and they are inserted, dragged into politics because of the owner of a team. So now they find themselves dragged into this political sphere that no one asked. You know, Sue Bird had that great quote of just like, we can't just play basketball, you know? It's like, you know, it's race, it's gender, it's inequality. You know, it's
you can't, because it affects their livelihoods.
Yeah.
It affects their livelihoods. And I think it's like the canary in the coal mine, right? And it's like there you couldn't get any closer to what she is capable of as a senator, because we see what she is like as a boss. Like, they're literally.
Oh, you're gonna run the state of Georgia like you're running your basketball team?
This is how you run the basketball team.
Yeah.
This is how you're gonna run your seat in the Senate. There's like literally like no better, because there's people who run for office all the time and they've never had a leadership position. Like you know what I mean? Like most people. So for her to be in a position where she runs a multi-million, 100 million, she's so rich. Yeah, she runs companies. So if the way she treats her employees, imagine how she's going to treat her constituents. Like,
brutal.
It's just like easy to see. So like they're like, hey, we actually work for this lady, and she told everybody she hate us. I don't think you should vote for her, because if you don't work for her, she probably hates you more. It just like was so easy to be like, my boss is really bad. I don't think that you should let her be a bigger boss in the world. It's just like,
you don't promote a shitty boss.
Yeah, it's like, even if we took the fundamentals of like humanity out of it, if this lady was a boss at a Burger King, the people flipping burgers would be like, this is the worst Burger King.
I'm gonna
don't let her go to corporate. She can barely run this franchise, bro. She can't go to big Burger King. She's gonna fuck it up. She's gonna fuck up the flame broiling for everybody.
She takes the oil and throws it at us at the end of our shift. She's a bad motherfucker.
Yeah, she cannot run this Burger King, bro. Don't let her in.
And so the last, you know, this is the part of the film now where I felt like I could relax a little, because it was just the last like 20 minutes that really concentrated on the discovering Raphael Warnock.
Yes, I love this. I love this.
So that part, that last 25 minutes where they concentrated on the race and how the WNBA players, I thought was just an absolute pleasure, because I was like, okay, I know the outcome and I know it's good. So that was just so fun to revisit. I thought that was but also it was just filled with these amazing nuggets of like what a real powerful moment to me was Angel McCoughtry, who is just one of the greatest of all time, and has been an activist since day one, and now is retired and still fighting on behalf of inner city kids, and she's amazing. She flat out said, well, yeah, we discovered Warnock, but we're not going to just vote for him because he's black.
Black. Yeah.
We had to vet him. We had to see
Mm-hmm.
what he stood for. And that moment, I was just like, for all these idiots that are just like, oh, black people just vote for black, white people just like, you're like, no,
No.
okay, these are
It's a lot of research
brilliant
going into
women.
this.
These are brilliant women that also happen to be brilliant ball players.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just this process of vetting Warnock and just, amazing clips of him being like, pro gay, pro women,
And
pro,
that's the thing
black
that we were talking
safety.
about.
Yeah.
That's what thing we were talking about before, is that he is not an overnight success. That's
No.
his third album. That's his fourth album.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
he could have, and it's like how on TikTok, like, people like pick a pretty white girl and like, we love her. And then like you find that she said the N-word on Twitter like 6 years ago. And just be like, y'all didn't vet the bitch.
Yeah.
What were her first two albums before we gave her the key to the
Yeah.
city? And
Yeah.
it was like, he was running on values that he had already
established.
Yeah, he had already been practicing. And I think
Yes.
that's the thing, because I saw there was like 15, 20 people running.
Yeah.
There were black women running. There were black men running. It wasn't even like he was the only person of color or the only woman running, but he was the person whose history aligned with the future they were looking for. So
Yeah.
I think that, like, kudos to him for like not being a piece of shit
Yeah,
and
just,
running,
yeah,
you know?
exactly. And it was all these like kind of really, we're going to get, to just a couple quick full circle moments. But I thought what one moment was especially amazing was Lisa Borders, okay, the former WNBA commissioner who initially fined the players, then
Yeah.
rescinded it, who is a black woman, was friends with Warnock. I think
Like,
working on his campaign, right?
yeah, she was like, I
helping
know
him.
him.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
he's the homie. I've known him for 20 years. And
yeah.
I was like,
So
yeah.
it was just like this perfect moment of like things that are meant to be. Like when you put
Mhm.
all this good out there and you stand up for what you believe in, and what you believe in, let's just make that clear, is what's supposed to happen. Just
Yeah.
dignity, humanity, rights, civil rights. I thought that was such an amazing moment because now they had instant connection to Warnock through Lisa Borders. Then, Michelle Obama comes in, and now they're putting all this into action. And then they start wearing just a simple T-shirt that says "Vote Warnock."
Vote Warnock.
His stock
Yeah.
goes through the roof. Now he's on the map, and essentially they put Warnock on the map. And with full kudos to Warnock, he's an amazing person and an amazing senator, but just, I should say, candidate at the time, so people could galvanize behind him. But again, they're just trying to play basketball in a pandemic. Now it's Vote Warnock. Now it's like on ESPN again talking about the activism, and he gets enough votes to have a
Runoff, yeah.
with Loeffler, right? So you're like, oh my God. And I remember that. I remember losing my mind during the election week. I think we all did. I remember getting up at like 3 a.m. and going, have the votes been counted in Kenosha County? What's going on with Wisconsin? And I feel like
We
I'm going to be
know
doing that
so
again, obviously, in
much.
3
We
months.
know so much about so many cities that we don't live in. And
The
it's very good, but it's
towns in
also very
Wisconsin, in
bad.
Michigan, and
It's like,
Pennsylvania.
why do I know this? White supremacy.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Why?
it was really cool to, like I said, we were there, we experienced it. It was really cool to win. I feel like
Yes.
we had just like the left in general has been fucking losing when it really counts a lot. And I thought that it was just like a really great like burst of momentum. And then, like we said, we got a Supreme Court justice out of that. We were able to get a Supreme Court justice because of what the WNBA was willing to do. Instead of shutting up and playing basketball, we like literally changed the trajectory of so many things like in the world. Like, it's really cool to have experience, and I'm really happy that made this doc, because I was like, there's so many pieces that you don't get to see that are part of this puzzle that go together. It's very cool.
I mean, it was the greatest ending. Like,
Mhm.
because I forgot about, I totally forgot about, like, I remember the piece of just like, okay, the runoff, right? So,
Mhm.
Ossoff wins, Warnock wins, they flip the Senate, right? Then you get Justice Brown, then you get Loeffler at the end of the film stepping down from the Atlanta Dream, right? So then you
Mhm.
think, oh my God, this is all coming together.
If
But
we
then,
wrote this as a movie, they'd be
yeah,
like, too many good
yeah,
things, too many no. They'd be like, you gotta
yeah,
pluck one.
calm down. But then Renee Montgomery, okay, full circle, UConn, Renee
Yeah.
Montgomery, one of my favorite players on the Lynx, in 2016. She's always been like justice warrior. By the way, does not play in 2020, leaves the Dream to, you know, to be an activist, to
Yeah.
be supportive of Black Lives Matter, and then gets involved, politically. Then March 2021, a new ownership group led by two other people and Renee Montgomery, the first former WNBA player to become both an owner and an executive, acquired the Atlanta Dream. That's
Yeah.
when I just started bawling.
Full
I
circle.
mean,
And
full
it's just the
circle
best. It's
moments.
just the best. And it's like, that's who should be owning the team.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you own a team and you're like Loeffler, shut the fuck up. Shut it up. Keep it to yourself.
There were some great quotes at the end. Jamel Hill, who's an absolute
Yes.
rock star. By the way, one of my absolute bucket lists is to
Mhm.
co-host a podcast with Jamel Hill. I've wanted this for like 15 years.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't
We'll
know her.
manifest it. We're gonna do it.
I just want to hang out with Jamel Hill like literally every day for the rest of my life.
She's very cool.
Have you met her?
No, I just know she's
Oh,
cool.
right. I know.
Okay.
Her quote was this whole story of the WNBA literally like flipping the Senate, saying was one of the greatest acts of activism of all time. Then, who was it? Oh God, I loved her. It was Terry Jackson, who at the time was the executive director of WNBA Players Union. She said they gave America a civics lesson. I was like,
Yes.
oh, yes. And then Sue Bird's like, basically we saved democracy. I mean, it was so awesome. It was so awesome.
It really was. It really was a lesson in what happened. It's so funny that it's called the collective bargaining agreement, but it's so cool to see what happens when you do things as a collective, as you bargain collectively, as you do things together, and how successful it was. Because I think that a lot of times people are like, it doesn't matter, it won't matter. Well, this was all Black, brown, gay women in America, in the South, fighting for what they knew was right, and they won. So there's no excuse for you to be like, we can't do it. They did it.
Yeah.
And the bitches was broke. Like, it's not even like they're not 100 millionaires. They making less than a school teacher.
Yes. That was first of all, at the end of the doc, I was like, how do I get more involved? Right. It is.
Yeah.
You have to.
You're really inspired.
And right now, there is an election coming up. Also, don't wait every 4 years. Midterms, vote locally. There's so much other things that people can be done besides voting every 4 years. But for God's sake, sign up.
Vote for dog catcher, bro. Everything.
Just vote, right? So you were so inspired. The documentary was obviously just so incredibly inspiring. But also, it was just a moment of like what they could have potentially lost. The stakes could not have been higher, and they got all of this done. That to me was just mind blowing. They
got it all done in like a year.
They get it all done in a matter of months.
Yeah.
They started that wobble like mid to late July.
Yeah.
And ended it before the election.
That
is every step of the way. Like just, from 2016. And again, will argue the activism starts on tip off in 1997.
Yeah.
They have been in, the front runners of change and speaking their mind, from day one. But really cool to see that the doc started in 2016 and went through Loeffler just eating shit after spewing so much hate. It was so amazing. It was so nice
to get a win.
Shantira Jackson, everyone, look her up, Follow her, support her. She is the best. I'm so grateful that she jumped on and we could talk it out. By the way, we can find all her info on her website, which is listed in the show notes. Power of the Dream, people, watch it immediately. Okay, people, we've reached that time of the show. It's the feel-good moment of the week, and it's Aryna Sabalenka, one of my all-time favorite tennis players, who just won her first U.S. Open. So exciting. Okay. She's so fun to watch. She literally rips the ball all over the court. Her average topspin forehand speed was 80 miles an hour. Okay, that was the fastest speed for the women and the men. She just like crushes it. But it's what she's overcome that makes her story so feel good. Okay. She overcame the death of her father, her ex boyfriend, her home country of Belarus being involved in a horrible war. And that's just off the court. On the court, she struggled with her serve, struggled to control her emotions, negative self talk, loss of confidence, even when she's winning. So 1 year ago at the US Open, she was up a set to Coco Gauff, playing lights out, just dominating, and then out of nowhere lost her confidence and just crumbled under the pressure and wound up losing the match. But after that, like, she didn't give up, right? She just kept fighting, willing herself to get better. And it paid off because she won 7-5, 7-5. And in those really tight, stressful moments where she could have folded, she didn't. She came up with a winner every single time she needed it. She also has the most badass tattoo of a tiger. She said, "The tiger is always with me on my arm. It's in my soul. It's in my blood. It's always there." So kick ass, so feel good. And that is our show, people. I will be taking Her Lights on tour this fall. All the details are up on my website, herlights.com, by the end of the week. Look for information on Thursday, September 12th and Friday, September 13th. We have a couple of different announcements in the works, which is super exciting. And please subscribe to the show, rate it 5 stars, baby, and leave a fun review. A big thank you to listener Gretchen E. for your review entitled Always Infectious. And you gave me 5 stars and an A. You're the best. I appreciate it so much. Fans, friends, family, have the best week of your life.